What if you could build solutions that unlock entirely new realities for millions of people? Aiming for something so big and so audacious that it seems almost impossible to imagine is often referred to as a moonshot. And what might it mean if a big part of what's standing in the way of your moonshot is your mindset? I'm Jennifer Strong, and this is Shift.
Now here on the steering column is a device called Auto Cruise. You simply set the speed you want.
Self-driving robo-taxis are already on the road in 2 U.S. cities.
As the disc rotates, a mirror reflects the light in the way that depends on how the signal was recorded.
This is the 100 terabyte. I present to you Electro, the Moto Man. Ladies and gentlemen.
I would say that one of my greatest skills is my ability to interact with humans.
This episode, a conversation with the author of the new book, Invent Now, The Next Leap in Moonshots.
Support for this show comes from Promega Corporation. When researchers choose a reagent, they trust that what's in the tube is exactly what it says it is. Promega takes that seriously, and for over 45 years, they've applied the same standard to how they operate. That means reducing their emissions in line with actual climate science, not just pledging to try, because their integrity doesn't stop at the lab bench. Promega, they create the conditions, you do the work that matters. Learn more at promega.com/sustainability.
Nordstellar is a threat exposure management platform that detects cyber threats targeting your company and helps you take control before they escalate. It's really 4 solutions in one. It monitors data breaches and the dark web, while also providing brand protection from impersonators and management of your attack surface. With Nordstellar, you can see your actual leaked data in your very first demo. Book one and see what's sitting out there now before attackers use it. Go to nordstellar.com/shiftpodcast and unlock your 10% discount on Nordstellar plans with the coupon code SHIFTPODCAST10. Just mention SHIFTPODCAST10 when booking a demo.
Hi, I'm Dr. Salima Bhimani. I am incredibly fascinated with how we find new possibilities in places that are overlooked and unseen and undervalued. I was the former chief strategist for responsible technology business and leaders, working with all of Alphabet, Google's moonshot companies, including Waymo, Wing, and DeepMind. And now I'm CEO of 10x Responsible Tech, where I help organizations and companies and leaders globally find their next moonshot.
So you've worked with companies making genuine bets on the future. What did you see about how breakthroughs actually happen that kind of contradicts the mythology that's around them?
Yeah, it's so fascinating, Jennifer, because, in the moonshot space, you enter a space where you have to expect the impossible. You go in thinking, I'm going to find something that nobody else will ever find or will look for. So in that space, invention and innovation is kind of baked into the spirit of why you're there and what you're doing. The one thing that I started to think about is so much of that is centered around technology. It's centered around let's build a breakthrough technology or an innovation that nobody has done before in order to solve really complex problem. And that is inspiring, quite frankly, for me. It was hugely inspiring. But what I also started to notice is that it's not just a problem that needs to be solved in the world with technology, but really what you're dealing with is something that's an ecosystem. It's an ecosystem of people, community, systems, technology coming together in order to unlock something that we haven't unlocked in the past. And that is actually how I think of an innovation and invention. I really think of it as sort of it lives at the friction point between people, systems, and what technology could unlock when those things come together in order to find a solution to a problem, in order to find an opportunity that nobody thought existed before. And that is what excites me, really, to be honest with you. And I think Alphabet and the moonshot world of Waymos and the DeepMinds really was like a launching pad for me to take what I think of as moonshots to the next level or the next leap.
So at Alphabet, you were the first person in this role, and it means you were kind of defining it as it went. What did you decide the job was, and was it different maybe from what Alphabet thought they were hiring you to do?
Yeah. I came in and I told them that I wanted to really take these companies that at the time were nascent, in their maturity, and really build into their foundation and their mission how they build technology and solutions for the world in a way that includes more of the world, so that it reflects more of the world, so that when they take their car out, when Waymo takes their car out, they're like, oh yeah, we thought of that particular issue because we saw it from the vantage point of X group of people, or we thought of it from the vantage point of Mumbai and not just San Francisco. So that was really my job, and I don't know that anybody at Alphabet at the time really understood what I was saying. They were like, okay, you want to do more like systemic change, you want to embed sort of responsibility into how we're building this. Okay, that sounds amazingly fascinating and interesting. Let's do it. And because that's how the moonshot space is, whatever, it sounds cool, it sounds interesting, it's going to make us better, wonderful, let's make it happen. So I jumped into that, and I found it challenging at times because, again, you're sort of working against the grain of how innovation has been thought of. But in other ways, because it was in the moonshot space, there was a lot of room to really push the boundaries of how people were thinking about building a moonshot and the impact it could have on the world.
This is something I love about travel and field reporting and, all the various places you go in the world and you see the things that maybe were born in incubators or made by engineers in one place in the world. You see what someone actually does with them somewhere else, which kind of gets me to this thing that I was thinking before we got on here, which is that, when PR firms pitch your new book or pitch you to us journalists, they kind of frame you as the Silicon Valley insider, which you are, but honestly, what I love about it is just how much you and I are both outsiders too. Like we both
Yeah.
have these rather unlikely stories for how we came to be
Yes.
doing what we do. Can you
Yes.
talk about that, your background and what you were doing before you came to Google?
Yeah, I'm so glad that you brought that up, because sometimes people stop at the Google 6, 7-year, whatever stint it was. But I'll tell you by telling you a story. When I was 19 years old, I went to sort of the northern Pakistan, which sits between the Hindu Kush Mountains and the Himalayan mountains. It's this huge region that runs through this valley, and the valley goes all the way from like the base all the way up to like the China border. And so I had gone there at 19 to help them develop an education program that would expand economic opportunity. Now, what did I know about this as a 19-year-old? Not much, right? But this was me, like, throw me a hard problem and I'm going to go and figure it out. So I went, and as soon as we got there, we were told we had to get on a bus, and the bus was going to take us up this mountain range. So this would take like 7 or 8 hours. All of a sudden, we start to realize that this driver is not driving straight. Okay, he's driving everywhere. And the guy next to me whispers in my ear, I think he's drunk. And I said, what? So we're going up this mountain range with this drunk driver. Okay. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't know if I'm going to make it. But all of a sudden, I look out the window and I look down this range, this massive mountain range. And what I see is absolutely spectacular. And what I see is what almost looks like land carvings, okay, into the mountains, across the slopes, like the most beautiful art I've ever seen in my whole entire life. And I'm like, what is this? And I come to learn these are agricultural terraces that have actually been sketched into the mountains, etched into the mountains, so that farmers can farm in what is not flat land. And so this is sort of like it was a example of engineering culture, sort of local ingenuity coming together for centuries before like modern engineering, okay, in order to so that these communities could live in very, very difficult terrains. Sort of emblematic example of how I began my career, but more my life mission, which is really like, where do we unlock those opportunities and possibilities for people with them, not for them, but with them, in ways that we wouldn't have imagined before. And they helped me see that terrain while I was about to die helped me see something I would have never seen before. And it completely changed my point of view on what's possible and what's not.
Amazing. And from there, what were you doing? Didn't you direct a play, write a play? You had this whole other life in Toronto before going to California.
Jennifer, you're so good at your job.
Oh,
Yes, I did, yeah. I mean, I did a whole bunch of things. I worked in the field of education. I did some work around women's human rights early on. Yes, I directed a play on sort of, again, sort of telling the stories of communities that don't get to tell their stories. So that became a big part of my life. I was a dancer. I was trained as a dancer, trained as a theater artist, and then spent a lot of my time working with government. So I did a lot. I was in Canada, and so I worked with local governments all the way to the federal government. And then I decided to do a PhD because I had been kind of in the field for a long time, and I needed a minute to sort of think about what I had done, whether it had impact, where was it working, where was it not working, this desire in me constantly to keep expanding and evolving my own practice, my own thinking. So I did this PhD and then I left and thought I was going to go into academia. And then I realized academia would shrink my spirit because I'm a creative and a builder and I can't sit behind pushing paper or, whatever. I mean, and let me just say that the pursuit of education and being an educational, whether it's an instructor or a professor or a teacher, is incredible. And I admire people. I've done those stints myself. But I just knew that now I wanted to take sort of my 20 years and really say, now where do I take it? What do I do with this? And so I need to go somewhere where the impact is so big, where the footprint is so large on our future and our present that I want to go and work there. And tech kept coming up. So as I've told this story many times, I just applied to a job randomly on LinkedIn to Google. I didn't have any big desires to go to Google. I just thought, well, Google's having a big impact on the world. I could go there. Let me apply. And, 7 interviews later, they said, there's this role with the other vet companies that hasn't existed before. I said, sure.
In hindsight, what did you maybe not know about tech in this case that in retrospect was actually kind of an advantage?
Yeah. I mean, the thing I love about having worked at Alphabet and been in that environment is that I'd say 99.9% of the people that I met and that I worked with, and I worked with, pretty much all the CEOs for all the vet companies and everybody else that worked there, they really care about the mission. And that felt very important to me, that people were not just there because it's Google, but they were there, or Alphabet, they were there because they really cared about the problem that they were trying to solve. But the one thing that I felt really good about is I didn't come from tech. So I didn't have a preconceived notion about how innovation or invention needs to happen in that space. I really didn't, like I was sort of like, I came in the first 2 weeks. I remember a colleague sat me down. They're like, I think you're a little bit too ambitious, And I was like, what do you mean? This is Alphabet. Of course I'm ambitious. This is the point of being here. And so I was kind of a little bit taken aback by that, but also I was like, "Ooh, you just egged me on. Great." You know? Let's keep pushing. Let's keep pushing. And in some ways, I think that the moonshot world made me really good at moonshots because it's almost like it made me too good at it in some ways, because it's like if the ethos is like solve a hard problem, find a solution that no one else is going to find, or that's going to be really difficult to find, then I just feel like for me that ethos was so embedded in who I was, right? But I wasn't colored by, we have to play within the system. So if I needed to go talk to a CEO, I went and talked to the CEO. If I needed to go and say, hey, let's connect this engineer to that product person who don't normally talk to each other, let's do that. If it meant how we looked at the data around what this product is doing this way, I would just ask those questions. And I was not mired by, I need to sort of operate in the way the system thinks of me as legible or recognizes me in some way. You know what I mean? Like I wasn't motivated by that. And not to say that people there are, but I just wasn't. So I felt like I broke the boundaries of where to go and how to go and build. And but I always just thought that as me being really good at what the space asks for, you know? Somebody else might think it was sort of pushing the boundaries in ways that was uncomfortable, and I think some people were uncomfortable, of course, right? Because you're asking them to think differently about the problems that they're solving. And in the Alphabet, the moonshot space is separate from the Google space, right? But a lot of people come from Google. And so the way in which we built solutions or products or tools, some of that ethos from Google, came over, but these companies were not Google. They were more quote unquote startup companies, right? So they had a lot more space to room to really grow and learn and sort of challenge and test. But I think in a space like that, it's sort of like it's a give and take, where people are like, yeah, but we like how we did things at Google, but we also are in this new space so we can learn how to do things differently. And I think I sort of sat in between that to say, yeah, let's keep pushing the envelope of how we build
Well,
moonshots.
it's also a reminder Google was not always Google. There was a time when it was
Yep.
a scrappy, big idea,
Yes.
that seemed
Yeah.
unlikely as well. So, the pitch for your new book is essentially optimistic, I'd say. The next great breakthroughs are just sitting out there waiting for somebody in plain sight, hidden, but in plain sight. Would
Yeah.
you agree?
Yeah, because I think that maybe in this moment right now, people are struggling. I was talking to somebody a couple of days ago, and they were saying, like, it's so hard for people, even in tech, to feel optimistic because we don't necessarily understand where AI technology is going. We don't know whether we're going to have jobs. We don't know, what's going to matter in the future in terms of skills or purpose. Like, what purpose am I going to have? How am I going to contribute to the world? So, I think we're kind of in the middle of that, and, my book is not necessarily a response to that. It started, I'd say, generations ago for me is how I wrote it, but I do think ultimately what it's saying is that, you know, we have been building invention and innovation in a particular kind of way, and it's been, in some cases, highly successful, right? Silicon Valley has done a wonderful job of being Silicon Valley, you know, um, and they will continue to build as they continue to build, and that's fine. I think that's great. However, I think that there is a call for invention and innovation for the rest of the world, and there are lessons to be learned from Silicon Valley, things that we can pull over and things that we might say, "Hey, no, not for us." And there's lessons from the rest of the world around, what invention or innovation can look like. And what I'm saying is that we're in a moment now, especially particularly with what AI could unlock in terms of tools and access, where we could be building solutions in ways we haven't done before. And part that is that we shouldn't be building for people, we should be building with people. That means that we're taking, contexts and geographies, and we're taking expertise, and we're taking, local insights, and we're bringing them together, and we're saying, now if we came together and discovered a moonshot, what would it look like? That's something we haven't really done. Right? We've been building more in silos, we've been building in more in sort of incubated spaces, and there's a lot of history and reason why that's been the case, and that will continue to be the case. I don't have any delusions or even desire to say we shouldn't be doing that. What I'm just saying is that there's other paths, and we haven't really explored those paths, but I'm hyper excited that we're in a moment where we could unlock things we haven't, because human ingenuity, we haven't tapped in to that collective intelligence, collective human ingenuity that could really help us do that with technology as our partner. And that is something that, from even a civilizational perspective, we're in a moment that we've never been in before.
It's really interesting. Partly, when somebody raises something like this, the next thing is, and here are the 9 things that need to change for this to happen. And I'm sure that some of that's also true, but what you're proposing is a little
Yes.
different than that. It's also like saying, hey, everybody, come on, we can all choose to maybe think a little differently and try new things.
Well, I mean, that's what makes a moonshot different from anything else, right? Like, I mean, there are people who build technology solutions all the time, right? Who build solutions with technology all the time. Moonshots are different. Moonshots are meant to be, let's go explore the thing that hasn't been explored. Let's go do the thing that we haven't done before. Let's go discover the problem and what the application that could change the world forever. That is a very different kind of ambition. We're talking next level ambition in some ways, right? So I'm not saying we shouldn't build those incremental products or, the solutions that are going to maybe solve that one little thing that needs to be solved. We should continue to do that. That's going to continue to happen. I'm just saying that there's this other opportunity in front of us, and that is not something we should look away from. And in fact, we should step into, because the question we should be asking ourselves is, 10 years from now, who had a hand in really defining the future and building the future? And I want to say more of the world needs to be able to answer that question.
Most of us saw routines take a hit over the summer, and while travel and plans may be slowing down, your obligations aren't, which can make eating real food a bit more challenging. And that's where Factor can help. Factor makes chef-crafted, dietitian-designed, ready-to-eat meals, so you don't have to choose between real food and convenience. With over 175 banned ingredients, every Factor meal is designed around what supports a healthier lifestyle and nothing that doesn't. Factor meals are ready in 2 minutes, there's no prep, no cleanup, so even on the days when your schedule is completely out of control, eating well is still achievable. Lately, I'm enjoying the many fish options and salads. There's also some Mexican-inspired meals that replace my cravings for takeout. Let's eat real. Head to factormeals.com/shift50off and use the code SHIFT50off to get 50% off and 1 free breakfast item per box for 1 year, while supplies last until 10/31/2026. That's code SHIFT50off at factormeals.com. SHIFT50off at factormeals.com. See website for more details. We all have our broken record speeches, right? The lines that we say way too much. And for myself, I think over the last few years has been watching people use AI to do these incremental things or to make lots of cuts and to become more efficient, which this is not to say that efficiency is bad or that incremental changes or building. It's more to say, hey, where are the moonshots? Like now that we have something that can allow us to have a little more time on our hands to try other things or go further, maybe we would take this moment and not try to cut our way to greatness only. Maybe we would try to achieve some of the goals, perhaps a younger, more dewy-eyed version of ourselves we're excited to go out and take on.
Yeah. And with AI, and obviously, Jennifer, you know this very well, like we're not just talking about like a tool, we're talking really about a brain, right? We're talking about a brain that is going to evolve and do things that we haven't even yet fully, completely understood. So I just think that we're in a moment where we have to ask ourselves, what is our relationship to that? Is it going to be one where we're just on the receiving end? Is it going to be one where it's just going to be utilitarian? I did my spreadsheets better. Or is it going to be one where we're really thinking about, I was talking to this organization sitting on 50 years of data. Okay. And they said, well, tell us about how you think we could get better. I'm like, it's not a question of whether you can get better. Let's start with, do you know what you're sitting on? Like, do you understand what's in front of you? And they didn't. And it was fascinating to me. And I was like, okay, and now do you understand what AI, any kind of emerging technology could help you uncover with this, not just for you, but for the ecosystem of people that you actually work with and work for? So you're not just unlocking for yourself, you're unlocking for this entire industry based on what you already have. And see, that kind of thinking, that kind of sort of evolved sort of state of being, I'd say almost, for leadership and for companies and for organizations is the moment that we're in right now, that it's calling for that. But we keep kind of going back to efficiencies and kind of like, how many people can we cut? And I'm like, okay, sure. That's one part of the very small part of the story, but you're missing the bigger picture here. And that's the call that InVent now is really bringing to people. And it's not just big companies, it's companies and industries across the world globally, but also communities across the world. What could you solve now?
Absolutely. Well, this has been a delight. I really enjoyed our chat, and I hope we do it again. So stay in touch, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Jennifer. I loved meeting another maverick.
This episode was produced by me and Emma Cillekens and mixed by Garret Lang, with original music from him and Jacob Gorski. Thanks for listening. I'm Jennifer Strong.